G'day, doggies fans, all things Bulldogs, doing an NRL Media Watch episode 8. Then I'll look at the salary cap review, every team's NRL salary cap by Brent Reed. Which clubs are cashed up and who is penny pinching? I'll tell you what, a couple of them are fair enough. The fact of the matter is there's $12.1 million for the cap. That was for 2023. Apparently, it was supposed to go up again this year in 24, so we're not sure what that'll be. But let's just assume it's 12.1. I've gone through the reported salaries and just estimations. So unlike the Courier Mail, I'm going to give you a disclaimer that you need to take what I say with a grain of salt. But at the same time, I know for a fact that Brent Reed doesn't have access to Canterbury salary cap and what players are earning. All he's got is the report earnings as well. And the way that they go about, even to the fact of spelling certain things wrong when they report on different teams. So let's get in there and have a quick look at it. And I'll flick through a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is give you what I believe how our cap looks. Because Brent Reed's basically said we're at our limit. And just carrying on the typical one-liners that Gus will have to move players on and all this sort of stuff to be in the market for the likes of Jerome Luai and Adam Fanua-Blake. Typically, comparing that with the Dolphins have got millions to spend. Now, they actually do, but and he should be pretty close to knowing what the go is with their salary cap, but I think he's got no idea when it comes to Canterbury, and all they do is cater to the headlines, which talk of sombrero, the fact that we're linked to every single player on the market, the fact that we sit there and we've gone out and we're turning over 10 or 12 players every season since before Gus came. And this didn't just happen when Gus will come to the club. It was under Dean Pay. I think he had a period there where they sort of had their team that they were going with, and they were just trying to enhance it the best they could as they were shedding players. But it's been a revolving door for years. And finally, and I think what's not taken into account is the amount of cap space that's been freed up for 2024 just in not paying players to play at other clubs. There's only one on the books at the moment that I know of, and that's Nick Kotrick, and the reported sum was 150. The Raiders, and funnily enough, the Raiders, having listed as one of their highest paid players, well, they're contributing $500,000 on his salary. And that's not even mentioned that the Dogs are contributing 150 on that. So I'll flick through the article a bit. Hopefully you can see it. I'll make it as big as I can. So let's have a look at it. It's a paid article. So it's a health check on all the different teams as they're talking about Adam Fanua-Blake and the fact that this guy here, Cape Weller's had to have been released by the Broncos and gone to the Warriors. The Warriors have let go of Josh Curran. So obviously there was a desire there to get this bloke over there. And Curran had a desire to go home. And then you got Ola Kawatu and all that. So looking at the Broncos, I think it's pretty well accurate regarding them. They are chock-a-block. They're big. Payne Huss has taken up a lot of money. Adam Reynolds is on about $800,000. Katoni Staggs is on seven or 800. Pat Carrigan will be on similar, and Reece Walsh is only on about 400 or 450 at the moment. So he's going to need a big extension, and he'll be paid over $1 million. You'd think that Ezra Mam would be needing above $750,000 to $800,000. That's what he could get. He'll obviously stay for less, and he'll have no desire to leave the Broncos. He won't be going anywhere. It's pretty accurate when it comes to the Broncos, and so it should be, being the fact that News Corp owns that club, and they can't really hide it. They talk about the Raiders, and it's true that Dad's Army is starting to age. People are coming off contract, and they haven't really brought much to the club. They just upgraded the halfback. Nick Kotrick, as I said, they're only paying $500,000 to him, which is a fair bit for a winger. He's being paid similar to Josh Adokar and the like. So the Bulldogs, this is what they say about us. The Bulldogs are jammed in 2024, so we've got 31, like straight away, typo. Players on contract for 2024 and everyone's thing. But for Canterbury, they write it differently. And Canterbury people who read that, it does change. It's as if we've got 31 players off contract for 2024. Most people realise it's a typo, but honestly, sometimes typos are deliberate. You've got to trust me on this. We're jammed for 2024, but that could change if former club captain Roman Patala-Mariner leaves the club. Front rowers are a priority, but they are thin on the ground. The player there that brings us back to 30 is the one that I've talked about numerous times, the young fellow who walked from the club with mental health issues. Hopefully, for his sake, he continues to play rugby league or does what he wants to do. And even if that's with Canterbury, I hope so, because he's a great guy, for everything that I could see. And I met him just as a fan, just saying hello, and really lovely guy, give you his time. So, I hope it works out for him. But to me, that brings our top 30 down to 30 players. On contract for 2025. So 22 of the 30 players are on contract for 2025, which is good. 8 off contract is a little bit better shape than what we were last year, where we had about 12 or 13. They're saying the Dogs are jammed for 2024. I already read that, but in 2025 they're saying it's tight again. It should be tighter next year because the salaries of the players off contract are way down on what they were this year. And when I tell you about it, so when people want to say the Canterbury are under a sombrero, I'm going to go through the players that we've hired, that we've brought to the club, outside of Stephen Crichton, and a couple of upgrades to players like Matt Burton, Jacob Kiraz, and Jacob Preston. There isn't really much money being spent on these recruits. And I've had to get us even close to the cap, even close to the minimum amount that needs to be spent, which I think is 95 or 90%. A situation similar to the Dolphins may occur at the Bulldogs in 2024, where they have to pay some players in advance to get it to the minimum, which means that will free up more money at the end of 2024 for 2025 and beyond, which is very, very important for us because, as I said, the players coming off contract, I think the most that a player is on is probably 400 grand. And a lot of the players are on the lower tier level that are coming off contract next year. But as typically, Phil Gould just can move players on any time that he wants. We like to create this, this persona to make people bigger than what they are when we talk about him, and maybe he is bigger than what he is. I don't know, but he's obviously got an aura about him, and it's for a reason. That's why people talk about him the way they do. But you need to understand there's a lot of things at play. There's a lot of different individuals involved, and it's not just Phil Gould tapping someone on the shoulder and saying, "See you later." Usually it's all about what people want, and Gus is out there to try and balance it the best way he can. That's going to set the Dogs up for success, but usually to try and help the player as well. And there will be players that you can't please everyone, obviously. On contract for 2026, 8 players, which isn't too bad. If you go through a lot of the clubs, Raiders have got 11 contracted for 2026. Broncos have only got 8. Dolphins have got 8. Sharks have got 6. Seagulls have got 11. They've locked in a lot of players. The Storm have got 11. Knights have got 7. Cowboys only 4. So a couple of teams have tried their best to be able to lock in as many players that they see as being the core part of their team. And the Titans are probably the one, when you look at the fact they've got 13, that means that they're like, this is our squad. We've got our coach in Hasler. We're going to compete for titles. We're going to compete for top 8s and move up the ladder. But the people eat. But when you look at the big cap eaters that they've gone through in the Daily Telegraph here, you can see why saying Canterbury are filled to the brim when it comes to cap spending, in my opinion, is really not reading the room with your estimates and understanding the big picture with it, because we don't have $1 million player. Tino's on $1 million. Mo Fotuaika's on, upwards of 600,000 or 700,000. AJ Brimson's upwards of that. David Fafita's upwards of that. And they're not paying small money for a lot of players. They've got Isaac Liu, I think, on $500,000 or more. He'll be one who'll leave, I'm sure. Toby Rudolph's just extended with the Sharks. We've got Blake Brayley, Cameron McInnes, Jesse Ramian, Britton Nakora, Nico Hines locked in for years, and Dale Finucane. You'd think that'd be probably getting close to Dale's swan song by the end of 25. So they're a team that are going to evolve their side as well. Dolphins are saying that their only big cap eaters are Flegler, Farmwork, the Hammer, Felice Kafusi, Jesse Bromwich, and Kenny Bromwich. Well, Jake Averillo's on over 450. So I think they're paying more to a few players than they need to pay. Flegler's on about 800. I think Herbie's gone for similar. The Hammer's on similar. And I think Felice, Jesse, and Kenny are all on similar to that as well. So, yeah, they will have some money. Of course they will, because they didn't go crazy. They did a good job. But it's much easier starting from scratch than being, tied into certain deals you don't want to be tied into. They got to choose how much they got to pay everyone from the get-go. They're saying our big cap eaters are Stephen Crichton, Viliami Kikau, Matt Burton, Reed Marnie, and Josh Adokar. Critter's on, I've had to put him up to on about 850. Kikau, I've put him his estimate up to close to 800. Matt Burton, close to 800. I think it's about 775. Reed Marnie's on 600, which was what was reported by numerous sources. And Josh Adokar was reported as 500. I put it to 550 with the third parties and stuff like that. But for last year, you could add Liam, take away Crichton, and you had Tavita and Luke Thompson on 1.5 million between them, and Kyle Flanagan on about $500,000. Not to mention Josh Jackson at the start of the year was on 600, and we had to pay half his salary or something. Corey Allen was on 500, and we're paying 300 for him to play somewhere else. So we're still paying 300 of his cap. And Dylan Watene-Zelezniak, 400 on his. So this has all not been taken into account. I know they've got to go for every team, but at least get the things done correctly. So it goes to players on contract to players off contract. Like, they don't know what they're doing. How could anyone pay for this? I don't know why I'm so stupid. I was getting it free for a very, very long time, but I no longer am. Manly. Look at their big cap eaters. Daly Cherry Evans, he was on $1.2 million indexed. Tom Trbojevic, Jake Trbojevic, both on over $1 million. Josh Schuster, apparently 800 grand. Ola Kawatu's probably gone up above that to 2031, and Luke Brooks is probably on over 500 or 600 grand. When you compare that to Canterbury, like, they're the ones. They've got no room. They've got no room, and I don't know how they would have any room for the next couple of years. To me, the sheer size of the contracts that they've got for their players, some of their players, and the amount of players they've got on $1 million plus or close to it, is remarkable. And then you look at the Storm, Cameron Munster, Jerome Hughes, Nelson Asafa-Solomona, Ryan Pappenhausen, and Harry Grant. Now, all those players are on $1 million or very close to it. And Christian Welsh, I think, is on about 800. Another. See, they've got their front row, they've got their big boppers, and they've got their spine, and they pay them properly. And that's when you look at Canterbury and go, we're out of whack. So I'll leave it on a picture of Gus and trying to sign Adam Fanua-Blake. But here are the comparisons. So last year, so for 2024, we've upgraded Matt Burton. We've upgraded Samuel Hughes. We've brought Kotoni Katoga into the squad. Upgraded Carraz. Brought Zach Montgomery into the squads. Upgraded Chris Patolo. Upgraded Jacob Preston. Brought Jordan Samrani into the squad. Brought Blake Wilson into the squad. So I've done a like-for-like comparison. When I go through our top 30, and that's leaving out Jackson Tupane, I have us spending $10.67 million. That's with Josh Adokar about 550. I'll just go for the major ones. Matt Burton, 775. Stephen Crichton, 850. Josh Curran, 450. Raymond Fatala-Mariner, 400. Max King, I've put to 400, and I have no idea what he's on. I definitely don't think it's more than that. Viliami Kikau, I've put him up to 800. Carraz, I've put up to 400. Liam Knight, I didn't think he'd be on 400, but I've put him on that. 1 year deal. Reed Marnie, 600. Preston up to 425, which I also think's more than what he's getting. Toby Sexton, 350. Maybe I've got them mixed around the wrong way. Ryan Sutton, 450. There's no way you think he's on 450, but apparently it's around the 400 to 500 mark. Connor Tracy, I've said 375. Could be a bit more. Jake Turpin, 225. And Blake Wilson, I've said at 200 because there was interest from another club. Bronson Cherry, 225. And we're paying Nick Kotrick 150 grand to play elsewhere. So out of all those players, and a lot of these new players like Drew Hutchinson, Salmon, Blake Taff, I've given them 250, which is what was reported. So the players to join the club or to extend, those salaries total $5.9, nearly $6 million. Okay, so that's Matt. So Matt Burton was upgraded from 550 to 775. Stephen Crichton, I'm going to say we've swapped him with Jake Averillo, so that's a deficit of 5.2 million. Jake was on about 330, from what I heard. Josh Curran, we've got him for about 450. Tavita was on 750. So $300 negative there, 300,000. Samuel Hughes upgraded from about 150 to 175. I've gone like for like Drew Hutchinson and Josh Reynolds, 250. Katoni Katoga in, Luke Thompson out. Katoga on about 180, Luke Thompson on 800. Perez upgraded from about 250 last year to 400 on his extension. Kurt Mann for 250, letting go of Kyle Flanagan on 500. Zach Montgomery in for Reece Hoffman on minimums. Chris Patolo upgraded from minimum to, because he's a prop and they're in demand, I've said 180. Jacob Preston upgraded from about 200 to 425. Jamin Salmon in, Corey Waddell out, same money. Jordan Samrani, close to 200. Paul Almotti was reported on about 250. Was getting paid overs before he even played a top 30 game, top NRL game. Like for like, swap for Blake Taff and Braden Burns. Conan Tracy in, Jaden Ockenbaugh out. Jaden was on about 250, I heard. It's between 230, 250. Jake Turpin, 225. Pele was on about 250. Blake Wilson, I've said 200. Declan Casey, I thought would have been on minimum, about 150. Bronson Cherry, 225. It could even be less than that. And I've said Jackson Torpenay was on about 180. And then other teams, Kotrick, 150. Last year we had Kotrick, Allen, and DWZ. Plus we're paying money in the cap for Josh Jackson. And that totaled 1.1 million. So about $1 million saving on paying on retired players or paying players to play at other clubs. So overall, the cap this year to last year, we've saved about 820 grand. I reckon it could even be more than that. I felt going through the numbers of the final top 30 that we had as of round 26 or 27 last year, we were spending about 11.54 versus this year we're spending 10.67. So I've got it that we've still got about $1.4 million in cap space. Third parties and stuff like that may be on top of these reported salaries for some players, which bumps it up a little bit. But there could be a situation where some players are paid more money so that they spend 95% of the cap. Now, 95% of the cap is $11.495. So you have to spend, if it's 90% that you have to spend, you got to spend 11.495. If it's only 90%, you've only got to spend sorry about that. I just went quiet for a bit. Just doing my calculations. So 90% of 12.1 is 10.89. So I've got it that we're in our top 30 at the moment, that we're not even at 90% of our cap, which would mean we'd have to pay some players in advance to get to the minimum, whether it's 90 or 95%, I'm not sure. Last year I had us at 11.5, which was 95% of the cap. But apparently it was a lot closer than that. But Gus did say at the annual general meeting that he believed there was between $600,000 and $800,000 in the cap free. So they had some players leave, New Brown and Andrew Davey and stuff like that. And then brought in the likes of Toby Sexton, Liam Knight. They had Josh Reynolds retire. probably paid out for the rest of the season. Who knows? But to me, what it shows for us is that, here's my head back again. It just shows that the News Corp media really have very little idea. Like, has Brent Reed sat there and crunched the numbers on every single team like that? Surely, the fact that they can't even line up their wording on the same teams, they've got on contract and off contract for 2024 when listing the same thing. Probably harping on about that too much, but it's just, look, this is a paid subscription service and they're making mistakes like that. It shouldn't happen. You know, so 12.1 is the current cap, which went up from 10 million in 2022, and the Dogs struggled to spend it. And the minimum wage is 120,000 last year. So there you go, with minimum wages at 120, and I've had to put them up. I thought the minimum might be raising to 150 under the agreement that they made with the Players Association. But the minimum's slowly gone up. Between 2004 and 2012, didn't change. Unbelievable. But it's slowly, the minimum wage is slowly gone up. Probably wouldn't expect it to go up 30 grand, but that's, I think, what they were fighting for in the players agreement. So there you go. Now, obviously, I've looked at reported salaries, as many as I could, and tried to use like a reasonable sort of estimate. You know, and I don't think there'd be too many surprises about outside of that. Like, Josh Curran might be on 600 grand, which we could afford if we want to. Players off contract for 2025. So when we look at the players off contract, so the players off contract for 2025, you got Bailey Biondi-Odo, Josh Addo-Carr's contracted for 2025, so you've only got Bailey Biondi-Odo, Samuel Hughes, Max King, Zach Montgomery, Chris Patolo, Hayes Perham, Toby Sexton, Jarrell Skelton, and Jackson Tupane, if he's still in the squad. Now, I thought that there must be a player missing there. Yeah, Liam Knight. I'm not sure if I said Liam Knight, but he's not contracted. So looking at those players, it's going to add up the amount of money that's tied up in that year. We'll add it all up. It's not going to be too much. So I've got $2.385 million on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 players. 9 players, which is already different to what News Corp was reporting. And it says that Bailey Haywood is part of our squad in 2025. But there was a lot of players supposedly coming into the squad for 2025 or for 2024, I should say, who aren't there, who didn't make it. But Blake Wilson, sorry, he's not off contract, so we'll take him off. He's got a 2-year deal. So $2.185 million off contract from 8 players, which is correct. So that gives you an average salary of $242,000, something like that, along those lines. So it's at the lower end of things. So they've got to replace 8 players on a minimum contract of between 120 and 150. I think it's still 120, but I haven't got anyone on that low amount. So you just wonder, how much are they paying some of these players? When you go through all the reported salaries that get listed, how close are they? Is it anywhere near what's reported? It'd be good to know. It'd be really good to know. So there you go. If they're looking to get a Jerome Luai and or a player who's going to be, look, if they're looking at spending $2 million on 2 players to come to the Bulldogs, that doesn't leave too much. They got 6 players to find. But when we're 1.4 million under the cap, right? And if some players are paid over, they're given advance payments this year that are already there for 2025. So just say they pay Matty Burton an extra 200 grand this year, 100 grand. Do that to 5 or 6 players. There's $500,000, right? And that gives us $4 million to play with. Now, can we recruit 8 players for $4 million? Or let's say 6 players for $2 million? Of course you can. That averages $333,000 per player. So we're in good shape. We're definitely going to have between $3.5 million to spend and potentially only 8 players to recruit. Now, if a player like Roman Patala-Mariner wants to move on as well, there's all these players, and there'll be, and that's if all of them move on. So Max might stay for similar, but being a prop, he'd probably be worth more next year. He might be worth 450 or 500 to a club. We might have to pay that to keep him. You wouldn't think they would want to let go of Max King in order to bring in Adam Fanua-Blake or Liam Knight for that matter. So look, I think we're a prop down. So I think a player that we let go would be someone, in a different position potentially. And then you got to see, are these players like Zach Montgomery, Chris Patolo, and Sam Hughes going to be worth more money next year because of the way they played this year? That all has to be brought into the value of it. But the point of the matter is that News Corp have sat there and said that the Bulldogs have basically got no room and that Gus is going to have to move some players on in order to afford them. Well, there's 8 players off contract, so some will be going. So it's no big, headline really. There's plenty of space there. We're about at least $1.5 million below the cap. Be conservative and say we're $1 million below. We have to be at least $1 million below the cap. All right. Now, with that being the case, that's completely different to what News Corp is telling us. When you go through the numbers and you go through the players who have come in and the players who have left, there's no way we've spent more on the incoming than we spent on the outgoing. There's just no way possible. And even if we did go like for like, we've still got money in the cap. There's money there. But the big difference is other teams paying for players in other teams. Nick Kotrick is the only one that I can see this year at 150. There was another, 850 grand, $850,000 saved just out of those players themselves. So basically, that's where a lot of our spaces come from. Okay, like for like, it's gone pretty much the same overall when you look at it. Using reasonable estimates and using stuff that's been reported, being conservative. And by conservative, I mean saying we're paying more. So that's more elaborate. Saying we're paying more to some players. There's going to be some mistakes on it, of course, but from what I can gather, there's no way we're in a worse position than last year. I think we're about $1 million better off than last year, or getting close to that. And so to bring in, if Adam Fanua-Blake was available right now, they could easily drop a player out of our squad in a player swap, or pay them out in the brown paper bag and take them out of the 30. Have a player retire, whatever it is. I know I said to get Adam Fanua-Blake into that top 30, they would make room, as any club would, not just Gus. And we'd have the money there, straight up. It's there right now, from what I can see. And then to bring in a Jerome Luai, you swap out, 2 or 3 players off that list, and you upgrade them with some youngsters, and there you go. Done deal. Not saying we want Jerome Luai or that fans want him. It's what the club wants at the end of the day. If that's the direction the club wants to go in, that's it. It's easily done. The numbers add up to me. They don't add up when you look at it at the Daily Telegraph. What we should do, though, is have a quick look at I'll just have a really quick look at what they said about the Roosters. Roosters are focusing on retention, which became more difficult when Angus Crichton's move to rugby union fell over. They won't be making any big additions for this season. They've got 16 players on contract for 2025, some with big pay packets. And they've got 9 players on contract for 2026. They've got a host of forwards under contract in 2026, but not many backs. They may need to spend to strengthen their backline, although Joey Manu should have committed to the club, and they will want to keep Sam Walker. James Tedesco's future could make things interesting. Big cap eaters. James Tedesco's on over $1 million. Luke Keary's close to $1 million. Joey Manu's on about 800. Brandon Smith's on 800 or 900. Jared Hargraves would be close to that. Sawali's on about 650, 700. Collins is over $500,000. Crichton's on about 700. Radley's close to 600 or 700. Spencer Lenu's going to be on about 600 or 700. Sam Walker's on over 500. And Dominic Young, we think he's got 400 to 500 grand. Like, that's why people talk about a sombrero. I just named 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 players that have eaten up big chunks of that cap. And for the fact that they basically say things are just as tight at the Bulldogs as they are at the Roosters, and they're only able to name 5 players in our entire squad that are big cap eaters. With Josh Addo-Carr, we know he's on under 5. He's on like 500 or 550 max. that our hooker's on 600. And Matt Burton's in the 700 range because that's what was reported. Viliami Kikau, I heard figures of 800. I heard figures of 750. Stephen Crichton, I've only heard the 800 figure. Half as many players listed, and none in the $1 million range. There needs to be an investigation. Anyway, that's the media watch. We've gone about 40 minutes tonight. I just thought I'd talk about it. Thought it was interesting. Another thing that they mentioned as well was that Connor Tracy will be out for 6 weeks. The full extent of his injury revealed. I don't know who revealed it. Don't care. But Gus will come out and said that it's a slight calf strain. He'll be fine by when he comes back from Christmas, and he'll be training in January. Will he be ready for the? Probably won't play a trial. Might, start a New South Wales Cup and ease his way into it after round 2 or 3 or something. Who knows? Or is it just Gus just getting out there and putting the cat amongst the pigeons? Why would he have to lie about that? But again, these reports are designed specifically because they know in the marketing data that when it was reported Connor Tracy had signed after being injured, it was going to piss people off, piss Canterbury fans off that was signed another so-called utility and one who's carrying an injury. Because they want people to think, they want opposition fans to think that Canterbury are breaching and cheating their salary cap. They want opposition fans to think that we've got a sombrero going. They want people to think that Phil Gould is the ultimate dictator. They want everyone to think that we've gone and bought players that we don't need and paid lots of money for them, when that isn't the case. It still brings me back to, they could have kept Jay Gabarella and paid him more money and still been in a great position. But to have that money available for Adam Fanua-Blake, that's what it's about, I guess. He's not going to be cheap. They need the money there to pay for him. So anyway, I've been talking a lot tonight. Thanks for listening in. But good old Brent Reed and the Daily Telegraph and just talking crap. Yeah, some of them are obvious. But to talk about the Roosters and Canterbury almost in the same breath, in a similar way to explain the differences, that they've both got a tight salary cap, is absolutely fucking ridiculous. Like, what, do they just simply pay their squad, over half their squad, on 120 grand a season? Like, is that how it works? Because I could tell you what, their top 10 players would, if we were paying for them in our salary cap, we'd be way over. Anyway, or do we just pay too much for our bottom end? I don't know what it is. But from what I can tell, we're in a much better position, and we need to realise that and not make sure we don't listen to these bloody grubs and their bullshit. Have a good weekend, everyone. Go the Dogs.